Transformation of polynomials. In this video, I will be talking about how the parameters a, k, d, and c affects the graph transformation of polynomials. This transformation changes the shape and position of the graph. For comparison, I will be using this graph as the parent graph. Parameter a affects the vertical stretch or compression and the vertical reflection of the graph. If a is greater than 1, then the graph will stretch vertically. In this case, a is equal to 2, so it is vertically stretched by a factor of 2, making the graph taller. If a is greater than 0 but less than 1, the graph will compress vertically. In this case, a is equal to 0.5, which is vertically compressed by a factor of 0.5, making the graph flatter. If a is less than 0, the graph will be reflected across the x-axis. In this case, a is equal to -1, which causes a vertical reflection in the x-axis. The graph is basically flipped upside down. The parameter k affects the horizontal stretch or compression and the horizontal reflection of the graph. Remember that the value of k can feel a bit counterintuitive. Larger values compresses the graph and the smaller values stretches the graph. If k is greater than 1, the graph is compressed horizontally. In this case, k is equal to 2, so it is horizontally compressed by a factor of 0.5, making the graph narrower. If k is greater than 0 but less than 1, the graph is stretched horizontally. In this case, k is equal to 0.5, which is horizontally stretched by a factor of 2, making the graph wider. If k is less than 0, the graph is reflected across the y-axis. In this case, k is equal to -1, which causes horizontal reflection in the y-axis. The graph looks the exact same, but it is flipped from left to right. The parameter d affects the horizontal translation of the graph, left or right, and the parameter c affects the vertical translation of the graph, up or down. Remember that dealing with parameter d, the sign inside the bracket is flipped. Minus sign inside the bracket represents d is positive, while plus sign inside the bracket represents that d is negative. If d is greater than 0, the graph moves to the right. In this case, d is equal to 2, so the graph shifts 2 units to the right. If d is less than 0, the graph moves to the left. In this case, d is equal to -2, so the graph shifts 2 units to the left. Parameter c is basically the same as parameter d, but instead of shifting left or right, it shifts up or down. Use an example of a person playing basketball as a demonstration. If the ball was thrown with more force into an upward position, the parabola will be much higher, which represents vertical stretch. If the ball was thrown with less force into a lower position, the parabola will be much flatter, which represents vertical compression. If the ball was thrown in a way that it's bouncing on the floor, it represents vertical reflection. To represent vertical translation, we can say that a person can be shorter or taller. And to represent horizontal translation, we can make the person go right or left. Thank you.